Wired Axcess.
We'll do it live.
Wired Axcess.
Do it live.
Wired Axcess.
We'll do it live.
Wired Axcess.
Martinez to throw it over the middle. He finds Jamal Turner. And what a block! Kenny Bell! Turner! Touchdown Nebraska! That's the best block we've seen this year. Flag on the play. Woo!
Necessary roughness. Offense number 80.
That's terrible.
15 yards from the spot of the foul. First down.
That's terrible. That's terrible. Charles.
That was one of the best blocks I've ever seen levied.
Come on.
And what they're going to say is watch at the end of the play as Turner catches the football. Listen.
That's football. Charles, that's football. What is he supposed to do?
I'm having trouble absorbing that one because that's a guy chasing a ball carrier, and he's very close to him. The plays, he's not 30.
Welcome to another episode of Wired Axcess Podcast. I'm your host, DJ K-Dub Omaha. We greatly appreciate all those who support, like, share, follow all the stories that we get to share. Remember, starting next week comes out the All Access. Granted, that's where DJ K-Dub Omaha will be out to the athlete school, whether it's their weight room, whether it is their basketball court, wherever they want to go in their element and share their story. And it's more of a story about what's going on in their past 24 months compared to the full year or full life that we try to do here. And it's just a little more in depth and a little more like the real thought of these athletes. So I greatly appreciate. Our first one will drop next week, coming out of Millard South. So we'll have to see who that is. But today we have former Husker, record holder, big hitter, everything you want to say under the sun, but he's also part of Hurrdat Sports. Kenny Bell, I'll let him go into what he does for Hurrdat Sports as well. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, appreciate you having me.
And what is your title for Hurrdat?
Yeah, so I'm a content creator and then brand specialist. So I'm working with Sasha and the team on the content creation. So you'll see me working with Anna and Avery and the team down there doing content stuff with volleyball games, basketball games, football, everything Huskers, as well as Supernovas, beef, you name it. So I'll be jumping around. And then on the sales side of things, I'm working with Chris Gorman and everybody on just building the brand here at Hurrdat and keeping as many business deals in-house and growing the brand as well throughout the state. So.
Well, I mean, you, like many others, the number one thing, probably 99% of the time anybody sees you, the first thing they say is the hit.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, usually.
That's what I love about what we're going to do. We're obviously going to get to know Kenny a little more in depth, starting from when he was younger, but also more talking about, records. Those are more important when you're breaking a record that's been around for almost 40 years.
Yeah.
That sometimes gets overshadowed, right? Because of how much publicity your hit gets.
Yeah, I think probably more people might know about that block than they know about like my actual stats at the university, which I played wide receiver at Nebraska, which I'm forever thankful for my career. I had a tremendous time playing, but like my numbers don't stick out huge.
No,
like it's not like I was getting 150 catches a season or anything like that. So,
but for Nebraska, you were doing something that some weren't, right? 40 years of receiving yards.
Yeah.
And then obviously Nate Swift didn't have it too long in his pocket, but just the fact of, receiving yards in general, because you're a wide receiver growing up in Colorado, but you're a 3-sport athlete player.
Yep.
What like turned your passion to go, football's what I really want to turn it on? What was kind of your remembrance back then when you were, even maybe before high school? When did it start getting real for you for football?
I always wanted to play football. My father played professional football. He played at Boston College with Doug Flutie, and then he played in the league with John Elway. So I always wanted to play football, but up until I was a real small, like scrawny kid. So I didn't break 100 pounds till I was like freshman in high school. So I didn't think I was going to get to play football. It wasn't until my junior year where I hit a growth spurt and actually started getting some offers. And then senior year is when Nebraska offered me. That's when I knew I was going to go play football. But up until then, I was kind of just a dorky kid from Colorado that loved playing sports and being outside. But I didn't have too much of a plan. But once high school hit and junior year came around, that was when it was time to.
So football overruled over basketball for you?
Everything, yeah.
And over track?
Everything. I loved football. I hated running track because I thought track practice was just the worst part of football, just cardio. So I never wanted to really run track, and I was lazy. Like, I think the way I'm built, I probably could have been a good 200 runner. but I was just like, no, it's just too
You were
far.
doing the high jump,
Yeah,
the long jump.
Yeah, I was high jumping, long jumping, running 100. Honestly, I ran indoor track, and I ran the 60, and that was my favorite race because it was the shortest.
Less time needed. Well, I mean, that speaks to the words of the football, right? The 40-yard dash is the most important when it looks to numbers. So growing up in Colorado, what all do you remember even just about football in the Colorado Boulder area? We've had someone, his name was Eli Hammonds. He was out of Colorado Springs.
Yep.
So he kind of talks a little bit about it. I'm trying to compare it to stuff that local Nebraska people might know, like competition-wise, opportunities. Now, of course, we're going back to 2006-ish.
That would have been 06 to 10 would have been me in high school. I would say the landscape of Colorado has changed, right, in the past 20 years since I moved away. I mean, there's been some huge, Google moved into Boulder, and that completely changed the atmosphere and the culture of Boulder, Colorado. When I was growing up, Boulder was just like hippies, everywhere. Everyone was, people weren't struggling by any means, but it wasn't the kind of Google technology money that is in Boulder now. Like the Southern California money. So that has changed the culture of Boulder, Colorado, but it has also changed the level of talent. So there's some really good players, basketball and football in Boulder now. Back when I was younger, not to say that there's no good talent that comes out of Colorado by any means, it was just a lot fewer and far between. So you had guys like Christian McCaffrey, those kind of guys. It seemed like one big name would come out of Colorado every
McDougal.
Exactly. Yeah.
And we had his cousin TJ McDougal on the show because he's a local coach. And it's
Pierre Allen is a Denver Colorado guy. Yeah.
When you look back at just that outlook for yourself and you're thinking of, high school Kenny Bell, Colorado as a college, as a team, of course, was hideous.
Oh, my goodness.
Going through a couple coaches.
Yeah. And I grew up in Boulder. My mother went to CU. I've got a buffalo tattooed on my rib cage. I love the Buffs. It's just in my blood. It's where I'm from. But we were so bad especially like when we were in high school from like 06 and then my first couple years here, like to 12.
I think you guys went through about 3 coaches in a short span of 6 years.
We did, because we went from Hawkins, who's, oh my goodness, that was the guy that recruited me to Colorado, and that was the biggest reason I didn't go to Colorado.
What was that like for you? Because I think sometimes people feel you're almost obligated, right? You're a hometown kid.
Well, it's not like Nebraska, so the University of Colorado doesn't treat their Colorado guys like the University of Nebraska does. Like Nebraska has such a great walk-on program, such a great story program of Nebraska guys being a part of Nebraska's program. Colorado doesn't have that same history of Colorado guys wanting to go to Colorado because the University of Colorado has never recruited Colorado like that because they don't believe the talent exists there.
I like that you brought that up because, of course, you've obviously seen past your time where Nebraska felt that way from a fan's point of view.
Yeah.
I just felt like it wasn't the place. And obviously things have been changing these past couple of years where you feel like the community's becoming the community again. You're seeing the guys out. I mean, you already know Dylan and all them are everywhere, making everybody know that this state is a part of that team.
Right.
What was that like being a player that has seen it with Colorado? You decided not to go there because you know how that was already.
Yeah.
Did you feel that was kind of some of our downfall during that time, or do you feel like
I wouldn't say it was a downfall because the fans have always showed up for the players and the coaches. There's always going to be loud, obnoxious fans, but that's every fan base, right? And the loudest ones with the most obnoxious things to say, the ones with the most obnoxious things to say are going to be the loudest, right? You're going to hear them the most. But I've always adored the fan base here and the people here because the Twitter comments and the Instagram comments and whatever that, I think those are such a minuscule part of our fan base that I don't pay attention to it because I get to interact so regularly with tremendous Nebraskans. So I wouldn't say that was a bit of our downfall. I think we just lost mojo. So when you're not winning games and you're not succeeding on the field, it's not fun to be in public, right? It's not fun. It's not fun to be at the volleyball games. It's not fun to be at the basketball games because you're getting ridiculed and you're feeling it from all sides. So
I like that point, man. That hits hard right there.
Yeah. So I don't I'm certainly not going to blame the fans. I'm not going to blame the coaches or players either. It's just a weird dynamic when the fans obviously want to see us succeed and the players and coaches aren't necessarily putting the product together to make that happen right now, or in the past, I should say. That's what I'm talking about is in the past.
Yeah,
I'm
for
not
sure.
speaking right now. I think that's a hard thing that relationship is kind of hard because there's frustrations on both sides, right? The fans want to win. The players and coaches certainly want to win, and they're giving it everything they got, but they also feel like they're getting stoned every
little thing,
every little way.
Every little way.
I remember when during my time, like it's really easy to put all the guard, like lock down the doors and be like, it's us against the world, middle finger to everybody. But that's not the best that's not the best plan either, because then you get such a divide between the players, the team, the fans, the organization.
Too much turmoil, right?
Too much. Yeah. There's
too many things to look at. So you think back to your high school days, and would you be considered one that's like today, a possible reclassify? Do you think that would have helped you at all in your situation? You said you grew a lot junior year.
Yeah.
I only say it. My son, he graduated at 17. Dude was like 5'10" maybe, and now he's like 6'1".
Yeah.
Because he graduated early. That 1 year is a difference. And I know so many people are ridiculing it now, but it's not their kid for number one.
Yeah.
For number two, it's not their kid that has to make those decisions to try to find their opportunity at the next level.
Yeah, I mean it's such a convoluted situation, right? With not only that, but with the COVID years and the kids getting extra years. And in my opinion, don't we just want to give the kids the best opportunity possible?
Bingo.
Like, I think we die on this hill of, well, we struggled with this, or we went through these hard times, like they should deal with it too. And I don't know if that's healthy mentally. That there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
But just because, we went through struggles in college or high school, I don't think our next generation should have to deal with that. I think of it the way the NIL stuff right now, and people be like, KB, doesn't that make you mad about the NIL stuff? Wouldn't you like that? And it's like, yeah, I would have loved to have been a part of that era and made that money. But by no means am I upset that these kids are making a lot of money, right? I think there's things that we can do to reel it in and make it a better system.
Yeah.
However, I don't want these kids struggling eating ramen noodle, or if they can't take their girlfriend to the date in the movies, they don't have the money, right? Like, they don't have to sell their memorabilia to get tattoos, which is stuff that was going on when I was in school. So,
and I think people don't understand some of those parts of it.
Right.
And that's what we'll for sure dig deep into. Were you a younger graduate though? Would that have made any change for you?
No, I graduated on time. So it was fine for me. But I just think like we have to reevaluate our beliefs and like, oh, well, we struggle with that. They can do it too. It's like, all right, I hear what you're saying, right? Like we don't want to
give them everything.
We don't want to give them everything, right? We want to build character in these people, but also they don't have to struggle. Not everybody needs to experience the same struggles, right? So I think of it, I'm incredibly grateful for the guys that came before me, right? And that's the opportunities I had were because I'm standing on the shoulders of guys that came before me. So I think of like the Damon Bennings and all those guys, Barrett Rude, Eric Crouch, all those guys that came before me that I'm wearing the N and having opportunities that I have because of them. I'd like to think I am on that pyramid of guys being stood on as well.
See, and I like that you brought that up because, that's one thing that even with the Omaha Beef, they lost their first game in 900 plus days.
Mm-hmm.
Tommy's not at the realm. He retired at his own cost. Everybody, of course, is like, get Tommy, pay him all this. And it's like, they don't understand the mental of it's his decision. He left on top. But then the only vets that were there let that first game kind of be played where these guys felt like they could live on that helm without earning that helm of we were champions back to back.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden the veterans held up.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden they're starting to roll. And it's like those mentalities of we can live on someone else's accomplishments and everything that they've done. But like you said, you lived on others and now you're being able to be lived on because you held up.
Because of that.
You held it up.
That's what building a strong culture is all about, man.
Yeah.
Right? It's like standing on the people before you and stepping in their footprints in the sand. And if you lay a good foundation, I mean, that's going to be a very, very difficult culture to topple.
When you look at your high school recruiting, what's one thing that you wish young Kenny Bell would know that you would pass on to someone if you had someone being recruited now? And what's one thing that you felt you were guided right to be able to get to some of the connections? Obviously, you had some big school opportunities. You had Arizona, you had Colorado, like you said. You only did 3 visits, though, so making that decision was pretty quick of this is what I'm going to go to.
It was simple for me because I was coming from Boulder, Colorado, where, on Saturday, if it's a nice day in Saturday in Boulder, like even if the Buffs are undefeated, like if you're from Boulder, the people are going to go outside and go hiking and biking and fishing and so football was just never culturally ingrained in Colorado the way I saw it when I visited here. Right. So that was the biggest factor. I was really fortunate to have a father that was like, hey, let's take our time when we go and see these places and not make a decision right then. Because everywhere we went was going to be great. Right. Like you're going to see the facilities.
They're going to give you everything. Yeah.
So let's take some time and get back and settle down and think about this. But I mean, the second I came to that K-State game in 2009 or 2010, no, it was 2009. Yeah, it was 2009. And we beat up on K-State that night game. The stadium was packed. I knew that I wanted to go to Nebraska. Just the culture, the feeling, the atmosphere. But yeah, I think the number one thing I would say is you got to find a place that you find a coaching staff that will make you a better young man. Because I think right now, and especially now in today's day and age with NIL and the ability to transfer, like loyalty to a program and a coach and just a culture is very rare. And that's alarming to me because I think about how much I love being a part of the Hurrdat team and like the culture. And I get that from football, right?
Yeah.
Like 100% I get that from wanting to be a part of something bigger than myself. And I worry about what kind of athlete we're raising in this environment. Time will tell. I'm not throwing rocks or anything, but it's just hard. I know at 18, 19 years old, had I been given hundreds of thousands of dollars and not been able to have a coach like Bo Pelini and that staff that really like checked us into telling us, this is not real. Like these people, like you guys are, there's going to come a day where you're not going to be able to play football anymore. And it's going to be about the content of the character and who you are and how you work and how you treat people. I just don't know if that message is getting through or being taught anymore. And I'm saying I don't know because I'm ignorant to it, right? I'm not in the media anymore. So I don't know. But I'm interested to see how that affects what type of young men and women we're raising.
Well, I mean, think about it. Someone like a Jalen Hurts, his story sometimes gets shoved on their carpet, right? Because it is good.
It's fantastic.
It's overcoming the adversity. And that's what I always try to really bring out on these. I mean, I chalked one of my first interviews when I first started the Wired Axcess was all audio. I had JoJo Doman, and of course, that's JoJo. Your guy.
Yeah, that's my boy.
And, dude, I felt like I wanted to run through a wall after talking to that guy.
That
and,
like,
if you think about the adversity, like he had to go through, it was 3 different defensive coordinators. Yep. It was having the knees. Like,
it was just nonstop.
And you look, like you said, nowadays where it's so easy to go, okay, do I overcome this adversity? Or do I find that next row? Because it is that easy to go, hey, someone else wants me.
I'll go get paid.
Right? And it takes away from what could be that value that is added later on. And I like what you said about Hurrdat Sports because that's one of the favorite things that I've been able to do with them. Of course, I just have a podcast and they have offered me a few opportunities like with the beef and stuff. But every event I go to is a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
No matter what level, whether it's high school, whether it's all Super Bowl to me because you never know when these kids or athletes, the adults will ever get that opportunity again to live out those dreams. So that's why I always treat them. And it sucks because I went to like a Class B school to do my high school football coverage where I keep people updated. Then I'll create highlight. I'll have a plug and play player of the game where they get a change, just kind of like Hurrdat, But what happens is I had the AD come to me and go, why are you here? Why aren't you at the Northwest Side game? And I'm like, everybody's at the Northwest Side game. If I wanted to be there, I'd be there. Yeah. But to me, your kids deserve it just as much as the next. But that's what is in public to some of these people going, we don't get these eyes on it. And of course, you're a content creator, so you understand you get 1,000 to 5,000 on one person that hasn't had it.
Right.
You never know their opportunities that they could get. And that's what I've seen organically grow through what I do is I'm not out here trying to rate kids and anything.
Yeah.
I'm showing their progression that they've grown in the year or in the game or what they've done, and just hoping if one coach could see that part of them, because I did have one parent that I knew personally, and I was just like, hey, I'm going to help you out. I'm going to put some clips.
Right.
And her son's like, take that down. I said, no, a coach wants to see your progression.
Yeah,
he doesn't want to see all highlights with no
nonstop.
progression.
Yeah.
I'm like, these are things that and it's only because I've had conversations with coaches. For sure, I've always said nothing that I have lived personally or went out and done personally. It's just I was a high school coach for 8 years. I took a lot of pride in just learning what the process is and some of it, but I still continue every interview that I have. If I have a college coach, Coach Held had me out at Kearney. Like I just sucked so much in of just doing it and talking to these guys so I could try to do my best to represent or give a representation. And I think one of my favorite, and I've said it multiple times, is someone like a Will Kyle who went from South Dakota State, UCLA in basketball, local kid, had multiple NBA agents reach out just because the interview and the way that he was perceived, because it wasn't about who interviewed him.
Right.
How did he look and how did he present himself?
Yeah.
And that's what I love about what we get to do and even for yourself. Like I said, I could go easily into the big hit, but there's so much more to Kenny Bell that I think if people understood the Kenny Bell of growing up and through the process, like you said, you were the small, scrawny guy that had to do everything you could probably just to get a rep, let alone
it was brutal.
Get the reception. What was your biggest mental break to keep you involved into the game when you didn't have that play ability and you didn't have the opportunity that you didn't get until you got that growth spurt?
It wasn't actually that growth spurt, because luckily I was talented enough growing up that I was good at sports, right?
Yeah.
So I was smaller and scrawnier, but I was fast. I could play, certainly. I just wasn't the size that people perceived for D1 football, right? At a big level. I think the biggest thing for me was my freshman year in 2010 at Nebraska when I got redshirted. And I had to practice against Prince Amukamara and Alfonso Dennard and Eric Hagg and just one of the best defenses in college football for an entire year. And I didn't get to play on Saturdays. All I was doing was practicing every day, just getting my lunch eaten. And that taught me a level of humility, but it also taught me on how to prepare for the week and what it took to be successful against the highest, one of the highest rated defenses in the country at the time. And I was only 18, and that was my first taste of college football.
Because what would you say your hardest thing in high school was? What would you say if you had to rate something of high school? What was probably the hardest thing?
I mean, paying attention, like high school, like,
I mean,
like for me,
people don't understand, because
being completely honest, like
talent only gets you so far, right?
I was in high school. I thought I was, king crap of Turd Mountain, so nothing could touch me.
On top of the boulder.
Yeah, just the biggest fish in the smallest pond in my mind. But wow, did that change within 2 months of graduating high school and then on campus here in Nebraska. Where, I think that was the biggest thing, because in high school, I genuinely did not understand, and I think that has changed a lot also over the past couple of generations with athletes, because in high school we didn't have Instagram and that stuff where we saw people training nonstop. Like I know there's kids that go and have been training for football seasons or basketball seasons, having off-season training regimens like in the 8th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade. And I think that's why we're seeing this level of talent just skyrocket, because I was not doing those things in middle school.
Well, I mean, but you also said that your dad, of course, went through everything with college and all the way to the league. But a dad can only do so much, right?
And if you push too hard as a father, there's a lot. How
do you think that line was between you and dad? And what was probably the thing?
Mine was great because my folks got divorced when I was young.
Yeah.
And so I would spend weekends with my dad. I'd see him all the time, and we had a great relationship, but it was never like hounding me about football, which was fantastic. And then on top of that, my mother remarried, and I have an incredibly supportive and fantastic stepfather, who both of them it was always about preparing the right way, doing the right thing, not performing the right way, if that makes sense.
No, that does, because I think they probably said if you do the right preparation, the performance speaks for itself.
And back then, that kind of fell on deaf ears. But once I got into college, I realized, I have a base understanding of exactly what my coaches are talking about, because I had father and stepfather saying.
When you see talent nowadays that sometimes gets wasted in that possible same aspect.
Yeah.
Obviously, you were able to get it in college. What's something that you feel like you could help them understand, or what's something that, because a lot of people do, they're like, I'm the talent, I don't need to do all this.
Yeah. It's almost, I don't want to say it's almost impossible, because even for me, like, you could have grabbed me by my head and shook me and screamed it at me at that age, and I'm not sure it really would have registered. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think it just takes life experiences, and unfortunately, sometimes you have to learn stuff the hard way, and I think that's usually I don't want to say the best way to learn it, because that's not, but it is. Man, is it incredibly effective. That's because you can have the seminars, you can have the panels. I think back to how many times that Bo and the staff would bring guys in and they would tell us exactly what Bo is saying, and at the time you're just like a college kid, so it doesn't always register. And then I get to like 25, 26, 27, now I'm 33.
You remember that one time?
Now I'm like, whoa, that's what they were talking about. So
yeah.
But it had I not had those conversations with my coaches and my teammates prior to that, and I was learning those lessons mid-20s, early 30s, life would be a lot more difficult.
And that's why I like sharing these deeper stories with athletes, is because parents are out there going through the struggles of going, what should I do? How much pressure should I put?
Right.
How much help should I find them? And then they go, well, I don't want to play in this sport. I don't want to play in that sport. But you're a lesson of going, I may not have learned it in the moment,
right?
But it's something that has continuously taught me year after year. And that's what always, as a coach, and the right coach, right? Not everybody's still a coach to you.
Yeah.
The coaches are the ones that really put into you and yourself. When you were also growing up, before we get to your college, were you a person that played on multiple teams, as far as you had different coaches, or did you kind of stick your way through the whole time?
I played on multiple teams because I played on multiple sports. So, and we moved around a little bit. In Colorado, I lived in like the suburbs, like outside of Boulder. So I lived in like East Boulder, but for a while I lived way east in Erie.
Yeah.
So I grew up playing Erie football. I played Lafayette football. And then when I got to middle school, that's when I started playing like football in Boulder.
Because I just know so many people nowadays, and it's well noted, where they're just like, some teams are getting good not because they created the talent, they went and found the talent, and now they're utilizing it.
You couldn't do it in Colorado. Like, if you lived in Lafayette, you had to play Lafayette Bobcat football, or Erie, you had to play Erie Tiger football.
See, and that matters, right? Because
it mattered a lot.
It teaches you that hard part of, we may not be that top team. How can I get to that top? Right. And maybe not in the moment, right? You're like, I was in middle school, man. I don't know. But as you see that struggle, again, it comes back to those struggles help lead to a better future. Always. If you take it as that.
Yeah. I mean, life lessons, that's build on those, and that creates who you are, right? So
what was the legacy that Kenny Bell left when he left Colorado? What was the thing that you remember for? What was the one thing that, or maybe a couple, was there anything that you left at your school that people would say, he left it better than I got it?
Honestly, I don't know, because I was not even our best player on our high school team. We had one of my closest friends growing up. His name is Tucker Tharp. His dad was the AD at at Colorado, Dick Tharp. This kid was an incredible talent, best running back in the state, and he went to Kansas to play baseball. So I would like to say our football team, but our football team has been like a state runner-up or state semifinalist pretty consistently.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Even our basketball, I played basketball just 1 year, my senior year, and we went to the state championship. We lost. But yeah, I don't know. I can't say. My friends and family certainly remember me in Colorado, just because I spend so much time with them there still. But as I don't think the average sports fan I don't know if they would know who I was. You know what I mean?
No, that's good to know, because
that goes back to like if Nebraska had a highly touted recruit, I wasn't, but that went to Colorado and then broke all of Colorado's records.
Yeah.
As a Nebraskan, like Nebraskans would certainly remember that.
Yeah. Why didn't we get him? Why didn't we get him?
They'd remember that guy, but I don't think the average Colorado like fan would, because like I said, like they don't have that history and that love for the program. I don't think.
Well, because of course we're just talking in this direction. I know it's like jumping back and forth, but that's what I love what we do. If Deion was there and doing what he's doing, would that be a place for you?
I mean, no. For me personally,
yeah,
I'm not hating on Deion.
No.
I think what they're doing is great for the program. That's not the type of football that I would have liked to play or been a part of. I love what they're doing. I think it's great for Colorado. I'm just
you said it though at the beginning. You said the coaching style matters and something that you feel.
Yeah.
So, because of course, like you said, they're changing things, but it doesn't mean that it's for everybody's tea. And
not hating on it by any means. I think it's great for Colorado. I think it's really good for their program, and I hope they start winning. When Colorado's good at football, it's good for college football. It's the same as when we're good at football. It's good for college football. So don't mince my words there. But personally, no. It was the same reason when Scott Frost was recruiting me to Oregon. I liked Oregon, but I didn't like the type of ball. I loved the way we played ball at Nebraska.
Well, you, of course, said you didn't set no records or do anything back at high school where people remember, and that's good. But you get to college, you understand that wide receiver for Nebraska is not the same as wide receiver for Florida,
Certainly
for nothing that.
No.
What makes you feel like being primary blocking is something that Kenny Bell wanted to do, and because we knew if you couldn't do that, you ain't seeing the field.
Yeah, that was strictly because the room that I was in my freshman year, my redshirt year, and all the way through. So my redshirt freshman year, our room, our starters were Niles Paul, Brandon Kenny, Quincy Enunwa, Will Henry. I mean, everybody in that room was like 6'3", like 6'3" and above. 250, 260 pounds that just went in and punished defenders. And I got a kick out of that. I mean, our first game, somebody should pull this clip up actually. 2010, Quincy Enunwa has a crackback block against University of Tennessee, Chattanooga. It might be harder than how I hit the kid in the Big Ten championship. It was one of the hardest hits I've ever seen. Like how Randy Gregory hit that kid from Illinois in like 2014.
Yeah,
he should have gone to jail for that. That was unbelievable. But yeah, it was really just a culture of we are going to just beat the person ahead of or across from us. We're going to beat him up 4 quarters. And then I took so much pride into it because I truly loved our running backs. We had some of the best running backs in the nation, but also just the best guys like Rex Burkhead, Roy Halou, Amir Abdullah. I mean, these are guys that would do anything to carry that ball for the team. So when it came to those guys getting like 6 yards or breaking a 25-yarder because I have to go put my helmet on a safety, we relished that in our room. We just couldn't wait for it. We had an award, the Perimeter Warrior Award in our room. Is like whoever could get the most knockdowns, the most springing blocks. We took a lot of pride in it, and that just came from the top down in our room.
When you think of you step on Nebraska, what's your first mental thing that you hit going, is this for me or is this where I should be?
Yeah, it was hard for me because I was a hippie kid from Boulder. Like I don't want to say I wasn't like anybody else, but I was certainly different. I was weird. Like I'm weird. I'm goofy. I'm not cool. I'm a goofy dude. I'm weird. So I think that first year was like, I was completely out of my comfort zone coming from Colorado to Nebraska. 1, 2, I was a tiny fish in the biggest of ponds, right? And everybody's,
gunning for it. Yeah.
Everyone there is there for a reason. So adjusting to that was brutal. Like you're kind of you're thrown into a barn
Is it one where you have an upperclassman that kind of pulls the freshman and kind of is like a leader for him? Is there one person that kind of maybe took you under their wing? Or?
Yeah, I would say Pierre Allen was probably my freshman year. I had a night class with Peasy, and he was a starting DN, a senior. He was from Colorado. He would at least talk to me,
Yeah.
Like he was friendly with me. But for the most part, like back then, we were we were a hyper competitive group. And if you weren't dangerous, we didn't really like you, and I wasn't dangerous, in everybody's eyes. So,
well, and you see what happens in 09, right? They won field goal away. What was kind of the first mentality, even like stepping into football going, man, they were that close. And now the mentality is going to change.
There was just no question. I lose sleep about this all the time. Like the 09, 10 and 12 championships, like how different the landscape of college football would have been if we win in 09, win in 10, and then win our first Big Ten championship in 12. I mean, I lose sleep over that. But I think we were so dead set on we have plenty of talent, right? It's the little tiny things. How can we fix the small things that are costing us these football games? And we just, we made some good adjustments. We won some big games, but then we blew some too. So it's a frustrating. But looking back on it, like I don't think the culture changed necessarily at all while we were there. As always, we're going to show up, we're going to work as hard as we can, and we're going to go beat somebody up on Saturday, or we're going to die trying. So,
well, you brought up, of course, a lot of the games, the big games.
Yeah.
What does that change in a locker room when you hear all week this is the big game?
Yeah.
What did that change? Did it change anything? What was the coach's mentality when it came to that?
I can't say that it felt that way ever. Because my first season of college football was just an absolute green mile of a schedule. So every single week felt huge. I think we went that 2011 and 2012 schedule was just absurd. I think
still getting 9 or 10 wins.
We were still winning 9 or 10 wins. Yeah, but we were going I think we had college game day at Wisconsin, right? And then we came home to play Ohio State. And then we went to, and then we had Sparty, and then we had Michigan, then we had Penn State.
Yeah.
It was an absurd schedule. So it just felt like every week was huge because every single week we either had a top 10 team or a top 5 defense coming into the house. So I don't know how much that made a difference. Like, oh, this is a big one this week. It was more so just in the moments, like in those big moments, we weren't relaxed, right? We weren't out there just balling. We were out there everyone just clenched, this is it. This is what we've trained for. This is what we have to do. And I think that sometimes led to people playing tight, people worrying, not being able to just go out and roll it out there and go see how it plays.
Looking back now, what do you think could have changed that mindset?
Oof.
Because of course people go through it now. It's one of the hardest things.
But the easiest thing to say would be our culture, right? And that comes from your head man down.
But you were involved in that. So you knew how that culture was.
Yeah. And I was part of as much as I was part of the solution, I was a part of the problem, right? Because when things started to go south, I wasn't going to be one where I was like, all right, come on guys, we got this. No, I was upset, So I think it's just growing, learning, and at 18, 19, 20, and our head man and all our coaches are the same way too, right? They're human beings. So if you look back 15 years ago, will they say, hey, could I probably have handled that a little differently?
Yeah.
Maybe, I'm not going to speak for them, but I imagine there's been growth and realization on their behalf as well. So it's tough. Are there any regrets? Absolutely not. I loved every minute of it. We went out there and we played our hearts out whenever we could. So
when you look at a player like yourself, quarterback, what was your number one difference between someone like a Taylor Martinez and a Tommy Armstrong for you?
Man, the biggest difference was Taylor was a phenomenal player. He was a great player. I've got nothing negative to say about Taylor Martinez. Tommy Armstrong was an absolute dog, right? Taylor, when he ran the football, Taylor wouldn't make guys miss necessarily with his jukes because he was just so fast. Tommy wanted to punish whoever was trying to tackle him, and he would I mean, Tommy would lose an arm to score a touchdown if he could. Like, that's what I always loved about Tommy. That dude wanted to win football games. Not only did he want to win, he just wanted to play, and he wanted to play as hard as he could. And not that Taylor didn't play hard. There was just a grit and a meanness to Tommy that Taylor was just a little bit different.
See, and I tell people all the time, because of course I got to know Tommy last year a little more in depth with doing the beef and just seeing, like, even at 30, he was still, we were at an after party. He's sitting there drinking a Shirley Temple, non-alcoholic, on that one, because it was after a game and we still had more games to play. And he's sitting there on his phone just watching plays.
Yeah.
Because he really talked about the mental aspect of football. He says, once you understand how mental can change, make or break. And I think I even had Chris Bober on this show where he, made it to the NFL, and he talked about, dude, I was not the biggest, fastest. I wasn't the best.
That was the biggest.
He was like, but the mental. What do you think of when you think of, like, people that have went on to continue to play? You obviously had opportunities to go on and play. What's the mental aspect sometimes people might lose in that?
I mean, it's not even just college, or it's not even just NFL, it's college as well. Like, I think the average fan doesn't understand the preparation that it takes to play football, how much there is to learn. But gosh, the biggest difference between college and the NFL is just that. It's the concentration, it's the preparation, it's the understanding of the game, because no one gets the NFL and just gets stronger and faster. You know what I mean? Like, you don't just go through a growth spurt once you go from college to NFL physically. What you go through a growth spurt is you have seen the game so many times played out in so many different ways that it allows you to react like that, right? In an instance. So that's the biggest difference, right? I think people don't understand the preparation that goes into football, or how complicated and how much is going on with football as well, right? Because there truly is no other game like it.
No.
Yeah.
No matter how much you want to say lacrosse, hockey, it just isn't. And that's even as a coach. Like, I haven't coached since 2018. My last class was Noah Fant's class.
Okay.
And at Omaha South. And even to this day, like when Nebraska went through the hardest times when we're losing, I have that coach's mentality where I'm sitting there. I was DB coach, so I'm watching the play happen from the backside. And when you're watching safety call his corner to do something different because he's in the wrong position, and then he gets beat because he was in the wrong position, people are like, oh my God, I can't believe what the defense called. And it's like, no, it's the mental part that wasn't played through. Yeah. And for me,
how was it executed? My
fandom even changed. Like, I used to be that hardcore, like, and don't get me wrong, I'm happy I get to talk to someone like yourself, a Tommy Armstrong, a JoJo. I mean, that means a lot. Like, I talked to Eric Strickland when I got to tell him that, hey, dude, I always put you in on NBA Live and all that. You know what I'm saying? Like, living those moments are cool, but breaking it down more on the fact of people don't understand that part of the game of, I mean, what was your biggest injury thing that you had to mentally overcome through your process? Because that had to have been a big part of success, right? Where sometimes injury would happen.
Yeah.
And you got to pick yourself back up, and you got to.
Yeah. Injuries are the worst. I mean, I dealt with soft tissue injuries a ton in the league, right? It's one of the reasons I never got on the field is because I was never healthy when the time mattered. And I think that just came from the mileage over time. But yeah, that's a whole other discussion in terms of, like, when you're in the training table and you're trying to get back on the field, because no one feels worse than an athlete when they're in the training room. All they want to do is play, and they know everyone around them is looking at them like, hey, if you can't play, we're gonna have to
next up
get you out of here. So that component, I think, drives guys insane, and I think a lot of times leads to injuries. Instead of coming back healthy, because that stress and anxiety of being hurt and then trying to force yourself to get healthier faster is just a recipe for disaster. And I think that's why you see so many guys re-injure stuff and never really get back, because there's a rush, right? You only got one opportunity.
So many times.
You only got so much time. So it's brutal on guys.
When you look at the wide receivers, before you named some great names that made it to the league, how important was that in your choice to go? Because before, Nebraska wide receivers are kind of far and near between that got those opportunities.
Yeah.
You know, how important was that also a part of, or
Honestly,
was it?
It wasn't. I didn't think about the NFL really until my senior year, maybe.
Okay.
And I was only till just like, and maybe this is, I'm cockily, right? Like looking back on this, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go play in the NFL, and I'm gonna play 10 years, and I'm gonna make $1 million, win a Super Bowl, and it's gonna be nothing. Like it's just like in my head, like such
the reality hit.
like such a young dumb kid. But yeah, honestly, I didn't think about it. All I thought about at that time when I was in college is working my tail off, having as much fun playing football, and then, you know, going to the bar and working and having fun throwing darts. So like, it's funny looking back on it, knowing how I thought at that time, like thinking I knew just everything. But now sitting here just be like, you're just such an idiot. You didn't even think about anything. Like, so it's,
well,
it's
I mean, you may feel like you're an idiot. Just know you're one in a million idiots that go through that same process, right?
I think it's pretty common.
And it goes back to the talent over the, you have to work harder to be who you are.
Yeah.
You know, and it's something taken for granted. I know I had BK in here. I've interviewed him a couple times.
My dog. That's my big bro.
That's my road dog, and we're always
bro.
talking. And even Prince, he brought Prince on. We had to do a Zoom because he was down in Arizona. But it's like just getting those type of stories to these people to understand the real life beyond the game of the fact of, you know, you feel like the limelight's there, you feel like everything's there. And then all of a sudden, one day it's swept up under, and now you got to go, okay, what's the next step? What's next?
Right.
You get the opportunity, you get chosen in the draft, which, of course, some of the wide receivers before you didn't get drafted.
Yeah.
They pulled their weight through free agent. What was that like going through the draft process? What was kind of your thoughts? What was
Oh, man.
What was Dad's word through this whole time? Because, you know,
Dad was great. Both of them were just be patient. You'll land somewhere. Like, it's going to be fine. I mean, the entire draft process, combine, that's when I started to hit the wall with football, where I was like, this is all kind of messed up. I love football. It's forever changed my life, and I'm incredibly grateful for the opportunity. But man, that combine was just the worst experience I've ever been a part of professionally. They fly you in. You're like, they do tests. You land in your suit, and they put you in like a Cybex machine, and they just wear you out for 72 hours, right? And then at the end of that, we're just crushing you with meetings and drug tests at 5 a.m. and just like literally trying to wear you out. And then they tell you to go, you know, perform, you know, and let's see you run and jump and perform at your best. And if the NFL really wanted to see guys at their best, they wouldn't do that, right? I think the combine is, they try and cram as much stress and anxiety into one weekend and then see how you go perform, right? Like, how well can you handle
the stress,
all the
pressure,
stress and the pressure, and then can you go perform? And I think that's what it's about. The fact that they're not just honest about that is incredibly annoying to me.
What was your favorite part about the whole experience?
About the NFL?
Oh, just getting through the combine. Was there any good part?
No, there was no. I don't know. I don't think anybody. I'm not sure.
Not even the invite. Okay, let's say.
The invite. The invite was fantastic. So I was down in Dallas, Texas, training for pro day because I hadn't gotten a combine invite yet, and I was about to get removed from the combine training group, and I was down there with Amir Abdullah. We wanted to train together, and luckily I got my combine invite that day, and when they were going to move me to a separate group, so it was clutch. So that was a lot of fun. Training leading up to combine was fun. Like, you know, we're going to make it. You know, dreams are going to come true. Yeah, I mean, combine was brutal. Combine is absolutely
so
brutal.
When you look at, like, let's say someone like Amir who's still dogging it in there and still doing it.
Him and Boogie, Levante.
Yeah, like how do those conversations, like, I mean, you've obviously had a couple of saying good, bad, and different.
Yeah.
What do you think is the difference?
I think everybody just hits their wits end with the game at different points.
Okay.
There's always, I think if you ask any player, especially when you get to that level, there's just there comes a time where you're sitting in your meetings, you're sitting in meetings for 5 hours a day watching football and you've been doing it for 15 years now. Everyone just gets the wits end where they're like, this just isn't worth it anymore. You know what I mean? Like, my shoulders hurt, my knees crack, I can't walk straight, my back is sore, I'm bored, I know all this book already. I think guys there comes a point where guys just reach their end with it and just time to move on.
Do you feel like there was any thing that you could have done in your time through the years that would have been a go-to getaway to maybe not get to the burnout stage? Because obviously now you see 7-on-7 is big.
Yeah,
like these kids are going forever.
I would say no, not for me personally. The only thing that could have been different is had I, been healthy at the right time and like made a 53 and not been on P squad, like that extra bump. But I just like my 3.5 years was always like I'd get hurt in training camp and then they'd bring me back for P squad and I'd ball on P squad the whole year, but then they wouldn't activate me. So I just got to the point where I was like, I'm done raking myself over coals. This, man, like it just I was physically exhausted, but I was also mentally just beat. And when you're like when the mental side of things go, like it's hard to keep your body in that kind of shape to perform day in day out at that level.
When you look at your years from high school to college to opportunity at the pros, what was your biggest changes that you had to feel each of those biggest change?
I think it was a self-realization, like, and stop feeling bad for myself, like stop pitying myself and work harder, and then it got to the point where in the league, I was, I felt like I was one of the hardest working guys, but then I wasn't getting my fair share opportunities and that rubbed me wrong. So then it just like, I'm the kind of guy where when that happens, like
it's
hard.
either you,
like, I'm not going to buy into what you're saying anymore. And I wear that on my face pretty obviously. So I think that coaches and teammates started to get the hint too.
I like that because that's the same way I am. It's either you want me to be a part of it or you don't. And if you don't, I'm okay with it. I'm not going to be mad. But if you string me along long enough,
wasting my time though,
then it's going to change that.
Yeah.
When you go through this process, is there any work that you had to do to stay afloat, like working, or were you able to just live between college and pro without having to get like a second job?
When I was in the league, I didn't get a second job or anything. I got drafted and I was fine on that front. And then I each year when I got fired, I got brought back almost immediately to be on P squad. So I'd be on salary the whole year. So I never had to have a job or anything like that. But when I retired in 19, I started working in 2020.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the first job?
My first job, I started March 1st at a company called NCR, National Cash Register, and I was selling point of sale systems in hospitality. So I was like, no.
No.
So I was selling point of sale systems in restaurants and bars, like in hotels. And I started March 1st, 2020, and then COVID hit like a week later. So like that crashed our entire business. I was trying to walk into restaurants and sell a $30,000 point of sale system, and they had just fired 90% of their staff.
Yeah, they're like, we're not even open.
No, get out of here. So I did that for a year, and it was miserable. And then I got into IT sales, and I was working for a value-added reseller for the past 4.5 years in enterprise IT. So selling into companies like Lockheed Martin and stuff.
Well, then there's a little bit in between there as well. You jump into this AAL.
Oh yeah, the AAF.
What brought you to that, and because of course, just like with Tommy, he had opportunities where he was like Minnesota Vikings, and then he ended up finding his way through arena ball, and that's where he made some.
The Stallions was awesome, man. It was the Alliance of American Football. We trained down in San Antonio. There was 8 teams. We were out of Salt Lake City, and the way they did it, it was a great idea. Like each team was kind of regional. They pulled guys from like teams in the area, so the fan bases would have guys that they knew of.
Yeah.
So like I got to play with DeMornay Pearsonell. I got to play with like guys from BYU and that kind of stuff.
Utah State probably and some of those.
Utah State, Will Davis, good dude. And it was fun, man. Like it was nothing like the NFL.
How did they even get a hold of you? How did you even?
I can't remember
because you were out of the game for a little bit.
Out of the game. I had been out of Denver because I finished with Denver like late September of 2018, and I was like, I'm done. Whatever. I'm not gonna play anymore. And then the GM of the Stallions reached out to me and asked me if I'd be interested in playing, and I was like, yeah, absolutely. Why not? They're like Troy Polamalu is part of the board.
Yeah.
So like there was some cool stuff about it. So went down there, had training camp in San Antonio. And then like, there was like 2 or 3 weeks into the actual season and they hadn't finished any of our facilities in Salt Lake. So we were still in San Antonio, like traveling around to go play. And then we get to Salt Lake probably week 4 or 5. And then like week 8, we're supposed to be going to Atlanta to play. And I'm sitting in our receivers meeting and my phone just going nuts, right? It's not the NFL. So I have my phone. I look down and everyone's like, yo, what's going on? What's going on? My phone's blowing up to like check Twitter. And it says that the AAF had gone bankrupt and like shut down immediately. So I interrupted our meeting. I was like, told my coach, I was like, we're not going to Atlanta tomorrow. I think we're done. And then, yeah, sure enough, like 5 minutes later, they came in. The entire league was shut.
And that's what people don't understand. This was in the middle of the season.
The
owners didn't know first.
Owners, coaches,
Twitter put it out before anybody else.
Yeah, and we're literally sitting in our hotel. Like we're supposed to leave for Atlanta the next day, and they come in and they're like, "Yeah, you guys can't stay here anymore. We can't buy you plane tickets." Like guys had to pack up their trucks and drive across the country. Luckily for me, I was just doing it to have some fun. Like there was guys in there trying to get to the NFL.
Yeah,
that had dreams that were just crushed. For me, I was like there having fun, like twilight years. Twilight years of my career. So I had a ton of fun, but I do feel bad for the guys that were there to try and make it to the league. Yeah, because there's some good players in that team.
So you get done with that. Where's your mental and your mindset for football? Obviously, you wanted to live one more time of just having fun. So it kind of probably brought that spark back. Coaching, training, any of that kind of came around? Or?
No. Once football ended in 2019, that season I was ready to be done. That summer I was just playing golf, hanging out, and then I tore my quadricep tendon and my quad muscles from my femur, and that was just like, all right, I'll never be able to play again. But yeah, no, by 2019 I was done with football, and it was done with me. My body was hamburger meat. So we got into NCR, but that was miserable, and then got into IT sales, and that was fun for a while, but I quit that job back in October. I was just burnt out.
Well, I remember when you like threw it on social media, you were like either moving up to Omaha or looking at Omaha, and you're like, I need a barbershop right away. Yeah, hook up.
That was back in 2022 when I first got out here, because I had taken that IT job, or I was working that IT job and took over a new territory. But yeah, I was looking for all kinds of stuff.
Why Nebraska? Why come back here? Why put your time in this area? What's for you?
Number one, I love it here. Like I've always loved it here. I've always felt at home. But number two is network. I've always been a fan of the people here, and I feel like I've networked tremendously with some great people here, especially outside of football. Like I think about the Team Jack Foundation and how many tremendous people I've been able to meet through that. Having the opportunity to be here, especially in Omaha, and a lot of people don't realize how much, not just business, but there's business. There's a ton of business that takes place in Omaha in a number of different verticals, which is perfect for the gig that I'm in now. So I'm excited. I'm very excited.
What brought you to Hurrdat? How'd you get even in contact with them?
Yeah, Sasha. Big shout out to Sasha. She's 100% responsible. She and Bill, obviously. Thank you, Bill. She reached out to me in November and was like, "Hey, do you want to grab lunch?" And I was like, "Absolutely." I love Sasha. I thought we were just like going to go grab lunch, catch up, have a few drinks. She goes, well, we sit down, we're hanging out. And she's like, "Hey, would you ever want to work at Hurrdat?" And I was like, I had just quit my job, and I was planning on going like a year sabbatical. I was gonna go golf, snowboard.
Dude, you could have done enough social media to make the ends meet.
But yeah, so she was like, "Yeah, what do you think?" And I was like, "Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Can I meet the team?" And then I came up here back in November, right before Thanksgiving, and I met Bill and Chris and everybody. And yeah, that's when I knew. I was like, absolutely. And then I was like, I was going to take a little time off. Is that okay? And they're like, yeah, come back in March. And I was like, oh, perfect. So
here we are.
And here we are.
Well, I appreciate your time. I appreciate your story and just kind of getting a little more in detail. We'll get you out of here on this, of course, because if we don't ask or don't talk about it, then is it really a Kenny Bell interview? When you think of the hit, what's the best thing that's came out of all this publicity for you? And what's one thing you wish you just never would have happened with it.
I mean, what I wish would number one thing is that we won the football game, right? Like I would trade my entire career, stats, records, all of that for one of those conference championships without a doubt, to get that opportunity and then go play in the Rose Bowl and hopefully beat up on Stanford. That would have been incredible. So that's number one thing. I think when I think about it, I'm just grateful, one, that it took place, but more so I'm just grateful that people remember me for that. You know what I mean?
Would you much rather be remembered for that? Or, I mean, we haven't said it yet, but for those that don't know, I mean, he beat Johnny Rodgers receiving yards. Like that is a almost 40-year icon. I mean, I just talked to Johnny on Friday Saturday at the Supernovas game.
Yeah.
So like he's a legend that is always everywhere
Johnny's
around here. Like that alone, like I understand, like you said, you'd give up those records, but what did that mean to you?
It meant a lot to me, honestly. Every record that I got at the University of Nebraska, to be in the record books at a university like Nebraska as a Cornhusker is something that I'll cherish my entire life. There's absolutely no question about that. But I'm just overwhelmingly grateful for it because, yes, did I catch the ball and do some good things? Yeah, absolutely. But there's no way I could have done it without the guys that were on my team. Like if Amir Abdullah wasn't in the backfield, Rex Burkhead, if Tommy wasn't slinging it, if Searles and Schlong weren't doing their thing blocking, I'm incredibly grateful for it. But I'm more grateful for the teammates that I had and the coaches that I did, for sure.
Well, once again, DJ K-Dub Omaha, Hurrdat Sports production of Wired Access Podcast. Thank you very much, Kenny Bell, for hanging out, and we'll see you guys on next episode. Getting close to that episode 100. We'll see what we do.